All right, people, I'm here with the Chuck D of this whole comic thing because
Word.
you give me
And
young Chuck D vibes, So, Mark with
and
the
that's
C,
funny.
sir. Yeah.
What up? Yo, 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 what up? What's going down? Thanks for having me back on, man.
All right,
And
tweet.
that's funny because on my last video, I was just doing a little bit of bring the noise because I was talking about Flavor Flav.
Yeah.
So I started the video off like bass. How low can you go? You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
when I heard you on Jay's, I was like, yeah, that's Chuck D right there. That's it. I mean, it just gave me the impression of it because um, you were just so locked in with your points about the whole Ironheart thing. So let me ask you, we all knew about this thing was on the shelf a couple years ago, and once we got a release date, were you already worried before they even dropped this thing of how bad it was going to be?
You know something, Sly? Honestly, it wasn't even on my radar.
Okay.
And that's kind of what tipped me off that there was going to be some BS. You know what I mean? It was going to be some
Okay.
bullshit behind this because all of a sudden there was like this big push at the last minute. At
Hmm.
the 11th hour, and it was decidedly like targeted towards black people specifically.
Yeah.
Like I knew it was up on the shelf. I knew that. So I just figured, okay, they're just going to release this thing just to get it out of the way, whatever, whatever. You know, I knew there was no way they were going to do justice by it because of what they've done in the past, but we'll get into that in a minute. But I it just kind of like blew my mind when I saw the last minute marketing. All of a sudden, all over X, all over social media, there was this call to the black audience. Like this is for you. Like at least with Black Panther, we kind of knew that Black Panther was marketed towards us. We knew it was concerning us and everything like that.
Hmm.
There was a lot of buzz, but with Ironheart, there was no buzz until the last minute. Now all of a sudden you got all of these bots and all of these shills talking about finally it's here. Oh my god, this is a great thing. Black people unite. And I
Yeah.
was like, uh-oh, here we go. Here
Yeah.
we go. So I kind of like knew from the very beginning what we was in for, man.
Okay. We're not in the Disney boardrooms. We're not in these meetings. But what do you think their mindset was? Did they realize how bad this was? They sat on it and they figured, let's just go ahead and dump it out, give it to the blacks. It should come and go without much fanfare because I think their mistake was trying to hype it up for us to give it to us, and I think it kind of got out of control. I could be wrong, but what say you to that?
It's weird because I think they knew what they were doing at the last minute.
Okay.
I think they knew because they were sitting on it for 3 years. These projects, they get tested. They have test audiences. People, they see it. They know what the feedback is going to be. They kind of got an idea of that.
Mhm.
But I think it was a matter of here we have a show that is obviously predominantly black, and marketing for this thing now should be pretty easy because if we go by what we've seen in the past, giving people what looks like them, especially in the black community, usually goes over fairly well
Mhm.
because that's what we've seen. And I've been doing these videos talking about this now for going on 10 years. It's like I say about 8 7 years since the last Jedi came out, and I've been doing this commentary and I've been noticing the patterns where they there's been this call for representation, and they started it. I remember when J.J. Abrams was talking about it. If you have a problem with women leads, you're not going to like The Force
Right.
Awakens.
Right.
So he kind of led the way with that. And then after that, you just kept hearing a bunch of talk about representation and black people wanting to see ourselves. So the studio, they were the ones who led that. So they kind of planted the seed in the audience. And unfortunately, the seed, it took root and it sprouted up to what we see now. Whereas we accept anything that looks like us,
Okay.
and we do it in the name of loyalty towards blackness. So I've literally heard people say before, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's good or not. As long as I see some black people on the screen, I'm going to support it. And the fear that I have with that is that we're being seen as a people who cannot be critical in terms of how they present us.
Mhm.
And that's so important because we have a major image problem,
Mhm.
in this country, the way that we're seen. It's all out of balance. You go on social media, all you see are clips of black people acting crazy, and a lot of those are AI too. Like a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
And it leads to this thing now that they're calling black fatigue, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody feels like, oh, we're sick of their shit. We're sick of them seeing them do this and that. But it's this warped idea of representation and wanting to see ourselves that allows the studios to take advantage of us as a community. So we pour billions of dollars into this industry, but for some reason, we're not allowed to say how we feel about the way that we're being represented. We just accept whatever it is they
Mm-hmm.
give us, however they want to present us. So yeah.
Would it be wrong for me to say, okay, we are represented, and now it's just time to just focus on, I guess, the quality of representation, not so much the numbers of it. So would I be wrong if I say, okay, every black folk chill, like they see who we are, like it's time to stop complaining about that aspect of it, and now focus on the quality in the way that we are presented. Is that fair, or is that doing too much, or is it too far gone with us to do that?
I think I think we have yet to really be represented, honestly. I
Okay.
think we've always been subject to writers that are not us, and actors who are just looking for a paycheck.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of honesty that you can see. I mean, you have your little scatterings here and there where you can say, oh, that reminds me of so and so. That reminds me of my dad. That reminds me of my mom, my sister, whatever. But for the most part, this entertainment industry has kept a very tight grip on the black image. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
we don't see a lot of black love, for example. I was making the point before about Sam Wilson, in Captain America Brave New World. I've been saying this since before the movie came out. Where's his love interest? You know what I mean? Like, all the other characters get that, but we don't have that type of character development, where we see a lot of interpersonal relationships, between husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, father, son. These
Mhm.
things are very, very important. And if you do get it, it doesn't last. Like what we had with Black Panther was full of potential. It's like they could have built on that, but instead, what we have is a bastard child, with the same name, but I mean, what are we talking about here? You know what I mean? We got another single mother raising another bastard child.
Yeah.
How did you get that out of Black Panther?
I
Out of what
mean,
we had.
I even had problems with the first Black Panther because I'm like, okay, we got African on African violence. Like, really? Like, this is the angle that you decide to go in, and the white CIA guy comes in the middle and kind of helps score. I didn't like that aspect of it. Okay, so what would it look like to you to have proper representation, and or how long do you think it'll take for them to get to that point to show us in a proper light? Because when you get black execs like Nate Moore, you get Wakanda Forever. So now, how do you circumvent or how do you push back against those certain blacks that are only handpicked, hand chosen to, hey, make sure you only show your people in a certain light? So how do we combat that?
To me, it's going to be a long road because if I can go by what I've been experiencing personally, just talking about this stuff,
Okay.
we're not anywhere near there because we have to get ourselves right first in
Okay.
order to know that we have the right to demand these things. It's like since I started talking about this, how we have to be a little bit more careful with how we're represented and vocal about when we feel we're being misrepresented. Ever since I've been talking about that, I've been routinely called a coon, a Sambo. It's like, and it's we have to get ourselves straight first. I can't believe that in this day and age you can get called those things for saying that we deserve better.
Yeah.
We can be empowered. We have to see ourselves better before anybody else can see ourselves as
Right.
better. You know
Right.
what I mean? We got to lead the way on that, man. And honestly, our kids are watching us as men. Our women are watching us as men. We have to take the lead in this, man. It's like if we're just going to keep taking crumbs off the table, then I mean, we don't deserve any of the respect that we think that we're asking for. You know what I mean?
Okay, but do we as a collective actually want that? Because it's
That's
not
the
enough for
question.
me, you, Jay, Chill, DA, and to come out here and say it. The action has to follow the words. I don't think as us as a collective. I mean, what was a black horror movie called The Blackening? I just saw that a couple months ago, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this? You know, like, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, go to Tubi and go to Roku. You see all, and I respect all black creators that put their vision on film, but not everything in my eyes deserves to be shown. Now that's the
Hmm.
gatekeeper in me because I'm like, we don't need this. This, yes. That, no. But how you see that?
All, all I ask is that it's honest. You
Okay.
see, I exist outside of the gaze of what's going on over there. One of the things that I've been talking about in my recent videos is my they them theory, where I'm just tired of us always being concerned with what they are doing over there, and you know what that's going to mean to them. You
Right.
know, like I've seen a lot of people do that. You know, oh, I bet they over there, they're going to hate this. You know, I can't wait for them to see it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have to be more concerned with how we see ourselves. They're going to see whatever they want. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm not too much concerned with that. I do think that we have to start here. And what I like about this YouTube thing is that I feel like YouTube today is what hip hop used to be. Whereas
Mm.
you have raw black male voices such as yours, such as mine, Fatal, Chill, you know, Demogeny, you know, the whole Dark Council. It's like this is what we stand for. You know, we stand for representing ourselves, you know, outside of anybody else's concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's what we do. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so I hate when people come into my comment section talking about well, so and so said this, you know, over there, you know, so and so said
Yeah.
that. It's like, okay, but one thing I bet you're not doing is you're not saying that Mark with a C said anything in their
Over there.
comment section.
Yep.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
don't bring that shit over here if you're not going
Yep.
to bring this shit over there. You
Right.
know, and they're not. So that's how I feel. There's nothing more empowering than doing your own thing. You know, it's like I've
Mm-hmm.
heard you talk about Mumia Obsidian Ali, right? One we all know about him, the Manosphere and all that stuff, the Black Manosphere, right? But one thing he says that I always like, right? And I'm sure he didn't make it up, but he says, "Good fences make good neighbors."
Yeah.
You know, so as long as you keep your bullshit over there,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm doing what I got to do over here, and hopefully the necessary people that need to hear it will hear it. You know, and what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing is resonating, and you're bringing you know me on and you know and Fatal and others because you're objective and people need to see that. You know, they need to see less Sambo and coon calling and more let's talk about this, let's talk about our differences. You know, let's stop going under the assumption that this person here is just a coon or a hater just because they might be saying something that you can't necessarily relate to off top.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I've dropped videos and I know you have too. You know, if you do this, where people just react solely to the thumbnail or solely to the title, they don't
Yeah.
even hear what you have to
Haven't even.
say. You just put the video up like 2 seconds, and they're talking about this coon over here. It's like, oh my
Yeah, you
god,
can tell
okay.
by the comments. It's like you didn't even watch the video. Like, what are we doing here? Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, which is worse, their critiques or the faction of us that were trying to champion Ironheart? Because it's not just so much about Ironheart, but it's what Ironheart represents. At least how I'm seeing it. And when I saw these content creators that I've never heard of, I mean, it's whatever, but they were just, oh my god, this show, and they're trying to lay all these points about why it's brilliant and this and that, and I'm like, what? So, which is the worst poison in your eyes?
It's always us,
Okay.
always, no contest. You know, because they're gonna do what they do. You know, it's like you can't blame any type of animal for being true to their nature, you
Okay.
know?
Okay.
So I'm not concerned with that because I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. You know, go on, do what you do, say what you say, all right? But what they're afraid of more than anything is us getting our stuff together, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I'm not really concerned with what they do, what they say. Of course I see it, you know, these are guys that I've been on streams with a lot of them. You know, it's like I know a lot of them, but y'all done lost your mind. You know what I mean? So it's like at this point, y'all go on and do what you do. I mean, I feel like a lot of people in this game just got high off of a little bit of YouTube notoriety.
Okay.
So after a while, your audience starts to run your channel, right?
Mm.
You're not even running your own channel because you're afraid to say anything that's going to lose you all of those subs and all of those views and all of
Right.
that money and all that stuff. So now you have to stick to the script. You can't go off script. You just
Mm-hmm.
can't.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way I kind of feel sorry for people like that because I see what's going on because like I said, I knew them, like a while back. So I don't subscribe to the idea that they're just some hardcore racist people. I just think that they got twisted up in the game, man, because they couldn't control their own image. They started seeing these people come in, and now they pretty much have to pander to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had to face it too. When I first started, I was talking about a lot of what I see in the hood, and stuff like that. I did one video about The Last Jedi, and all of a sudden I got a bunch of subs, and a lot of
I
it
know.
is because right. And I came back, and I'm like, what? 1,000 subs out from where? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then I found out that Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers gave me a shout out, and this was a long time ago,
Okay.
right? They were doing their stream, the High Council,
Mm-hmm.
and the High, I think it was Council, but anyway, so he gave me that shout out. So sent me all of these people, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with these people now? Because I've been talking about something different. I just talked about The Last Jedi because I'm a
Right.
Star Wars fan, and I didn't like it. So
Right.
like with anything else, I just spoke my mind about that. So what I did was I found a way to kind of combine the interests because I am a hardcore sci-fi, I collected comics, all that stuff, and it's always been a concern to me how we're represented in these, comics and TV shows and movies. So Finn was underused, he was underdeveloped. So I kind of took that angle, as somebody who is black, as someone who is raising a black son to be a black man, we have some concerns about how we're represented in these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I started seeing consistently our characters are underdeveloped. So to me, that was like one of the most important messages out of that whole fandom menace movement because everyone else was just talking about we don't like the entertainment. I was talking about I don't like this imaging. You know what I mean? Like to me, it felt like they were using us. They were exploiting us as black people because
Mm-hmm.
they kept bragging, "Oh, we got black people here. We're going to create this role for black people, black people, black people." But you're not developing the character. You're underserving the audience that you claim to be caring about, you know? So to me, that was a very big difference because everybody else is talking about what they want to talk about. They're exploiting what they want to exploit. But only like the Dark Council and people like us in that space, we're the only ones who's talking about what it means to our community, what it means if you're going to use our name, if you're going to use the, black this and black that, then you better come correct, and they haven't since. They haven't even addressed our concerns because everyone is so busy being fixated on they, them. And meanwhile, they just keep blowing up and blowing up and blowing up because they're infamous at this point,
Mm-hmm.
So they're like the bad boys of this because they got big mouths and they appeal to what other people wish they would say. You know what I mean? They
Mm-hmm.
wish they could say the stuff that they're saying on the mic over there. So they bring in all of these, quite frankly, all these pussies who come in, you know, and they get their numbers.
Let
Meanwhile,
me
they don't want
ask.
to hear what we have to say.
Right. Well, let me ask you, how would you have a conversation with either a faction of people or demographic of people that can't even fathom that there would be somebody in outer space that doesn't look like them? Like, I remember growing up, I remember Enemy Mine, Louis Gossett, and I remember reading reviews, and white folk were like, is that supposed to be a black alien? And then when people found out it was played by Lou Gossett, they were like, oh, it's played by a black man. And then the first alien happened to be a brother, 7-foot brother, that's the alien. Outside of the alien motif, how do you explain to somebody or a group of people, say, there would be black people in outer space? Like, you can't have a Star Wars as expansive as that whole lore is without somebody that looks like me. And how do you even approach that conversation? What could you possibly say to somebody that just can't wrap their heads around that idea?
I kind of think that's a relatively recent concern. I mean,
Okay.
honestly, when I was coming up, and I know a lot of dudes who was coming up at the same time, it's like we were more caught up in the action and adventure of it all.
Okay.
It's like when I think back on it, watching Star Wars and stuff like that. Uh, yeah, you can see that obviously Luke Skywalker was a white dude, but it was Luke Skywalker. It was a character, and he was surrounded by alien characters. So you were in a different world. You were in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away,
Hmm.
and we allowed the story to take us there.
Okay.
So there was truly a fantastic or a fantasy aspect to it, where you did allow yourself to be transported somewhere else.
Hmm.
And my understanding always was that whoever creates is the one who gets to determine what they look like. I mean, we even say in the Bible that God created man in his own
In
image.
his, yes, right.
So what is a artist or a creator if not God to what he creates? So if George Lucas is a white man, then I would say 99.9% of the time he's going to create a white character. My thing was, because me and my brother, when we were growing up and stuff, we were so big on Star Wars and Star Trek, we would just sit down and we would start drawing. And when we drew, we would draw characters that looked like us.
Okay.
So to me, the answer was always very simple. If you want the diversity, you create the diversity. The problem was in our community, like I said, I always start here first. We didn't encourage that with each other. Like
Okay.
being a sci-fi person, being a nerd, being a geek or a dork was kind of looked down on. With because I
Extremely.
know with me,
Yeah.
I am 6'5", but the only thing I was supposed to be doing was playing basketball. And my pops let me know that. I'm trying to draw. I'm talking about, Dad, I want to go to the School of Visual Arts. What? You know what I mean? Boy, you
Yeah.
better put this ball in your hand. You and your little gay friends. He used to always be saying that. You know what I mean? It's like, because he came out of the projects. He came out of Marcy Projects in Brooklyn, right? So
Okay.
he wasn't trying to hear, no, I want to be an artist, right? My son, the artist, what? And me and my brother, we both did it. So there
Okay.
was always this discouraging, you know. So I always took the idea that it starts here. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
starts here. Like, if we can create it, if we can support it, then there's no reason why it wouldn't be. But I don't blame other creators for creating stuff that reflects them and reflects their values and things like that. Now, if they want to create a Lando Calrissian, that's great. You know what I mean? I was glad to see him, but at the same time, I was glad to see him because he was a great character. He was smooth. You know what I mean? He was doing what he had to do. I'm sure some people at the time had a hard time with that. But once again, those of us who are hardcore fans,
Mhm.
all we asked for was the action, adventure, and excitement of it. Now, if we are challenged with seeing ourselves in that universe, then that would be the problem. We have to be able to see ourselves to be able to realize this. And I just wonder how often we are able to give our kids permission to have that dream, you know, because
I
I sure
see.
didn't.
Right.
Whenever
Yeah.
I got punished, I talk about it all the time. Whenever I got punished when I was coming up, my pops would rip up my comics.
Mm.
That's where he used to go with it. And look, me and my pops are cool now. He's still hanging around. He's hanging in there. What's he like 75 now? I still haven't caught him. He's 6'7". I said I'm 6'5". He's 6'7".
Okay.
But and he's like, Mark, I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, okay, okay, Dad. I'm old now. Okay, you can stop. But it kind of kills your ambition and your motivation
Yeah.
when that's how it is. And they just be like destroying your dream and discouraging it. And I always tell that story, not because it's woe is me, but I still see kids go through it, like
Mhm.
young black kids and stuff.
Mhm.
And we got to give them permission to be able to dream what it is that they're dreaming. It doesn't have to be drawing or animation, whatever it is. You want to be a rocket scientist or whatever. It's like, don't discourage them from doing that. Don't keep showing them on TV in the hood. And that's what the point that I'm trying to talk about. Like, they know that there's a hood. They know they're from the hood. What they want to see is how we can ascend out of there. What they want to see is their ideal. That's the reason why I went at Director X, and that's the reason why I go at Ironheart and stuff like that, because these motherfuckers want to keep us there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They want to keep us there. Black Panther started to elevate us with Wakanda, with a king, with a black man that you could believe in, and they killed it. You know what I mean? Now we're back to square one. Like, how often are we going to keep going through this? So don't ask me to support Ironheart when everything that came before Ironheart got scrubbed. Why Ironheart's going to get scrubbed? They talk about it's not going to get a season two. She embraced evil, and they're going to leave it like that. Even if she shows up in an Avengers movie, they're not going to resolve that.
do, do you want to see that character arc be resolved though? Like it was so poorly written, it's so blatant, and I mean it's like every worst black stereotype trope was in this series. And of course, yes, you sell your soul to the devil. We make jokes about people doing it in the industry all day, every day, and then see it actually play out. It's like, oh, yes, how y'all gonna play us? So why will we even give the creators grace to even complete the arc? Because I'm just, it
Uh,
was so disrespectful at this point. But go ahead.
Only because I'm not invested so much in the story as I am with the way they marketed this thing. Now, if
Okay.
you're going to market it towards our daughters, if you're going to market it towards young black girls, then you kind of owe it to them to not see that last image of her being possibly going to evil. You know what I mean? Because you brought them in, you wanted them to look at this, and that's the point that I always try to make to people. And I was talking about that on a stream a couple of days ago. Is that this criticism that people give to me that go, you're not even watching the show. It's like, well, it's for kids, and everything. You're an old man. What are you talking about this for? My thing is, listen, we got to talk about this as parents. You know, I
Mhm.
know it's something that a lot of people actually don't think about, but we are parents, and parents are supposed to be responsible for the positive development of their children, right? The positive affirmation of their children so that their children just maybe might feel good about who they are. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
That's
Yeah.
important. So they look to us to be able to shield them and to guide them from the things that are going to hurt them. So that means that you look at the things that they're ingesting, not just in their food, on their plate, in their cup, but also in their mind, in their ears, in their eyes. So yes, I am concerned with what our children are watching, what our children are looking at. And if you leave that character possibly being seduced and turning over to evil and stuff, then there's some young girl out there who is invested in this character. Riri Williams, I want to be like Riri Williams. Riri Williams just made a deal with the
The
devil,
damn
and
devil.
and they're and they're gonna leave it that way. And a year ago, almost to the day, they did the same thing with the acolyte. They had the young black girl
That's
that
right.
they were that they were promoting to young black women, and
That's
they
right.
had her also embrace evil, and they left it that way. You know what I mean? Now look, our young black daughters, what do they have here? What do they have? They have Sexy Red, they have Megan Thee Stallion. It's like they have all this twerking, all this overabundance of tattoos. It's like this. They have a bunch of videos on social media fighting at the Waffle House. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
this is what they're giving our daughters, right? So yeah, somebody should have some type of standard. Somebody should have some type of expectation because the whole rest of the world, they are more than happy to see the worst of us. That's why I'm not concerned with what they do over there. They can
Okay.
see the worst of us. All right. Even worse than that is us seeing and believing the worst of us.
Here's what I've learned. Ever since I think the Jar Jar Binks thing kind of took off, like, okay, what are we doing with these blackish like characters? Um, it's one thing to have a poorly written character, but when they're a person of color, it's like, ooh, it's double down. Now it's twice as bad because, like you said, homegirl from the acolyte. You can go back to Jar Jar Binks, even Finn. Like when it's a poorly written black character, it's like the fangs and claws come out even more so. Um, Not even from our side, but from their side. Do you have an idea why it's double? It's almost like twice as we got to go extra hard now. You gave us a poorly written character, but now they're black, so now we got to go double down on them. It's weird to me.
Uh, a lot of that stems from America's unresolved issues,
Okay.
from racial issues, you
Okay.
know, like my son, he was recently learning about Emmett Till. You know,
Oh,
Emmett
okay.
Till, that story will change your life. Obviously, you know, it's like
Yeah.
I remember when I was his age. It was about around the time when I first saw those terrible images of
Yeah.
what they did to that poor little boy, and you imagine what he might have been thinking in that
Mm-hmm.
moment when that was
Mm-hmm.
happening. And I told my son, listen, think about Emmett Till. Think about the four young black girls who were bombed in the church. You know, think about all of these things. America has to justify the evil and the terrible things that it did somehow. And one of the ways they can do that is by pointing to us being subhuman, doing terrible things, indulging and engaging in these stereotypes to say, that's the way they were all along. I don't have to feel bad about what we did to them. Look
Right.
at them. Look at what they do. You know, look at how the men run out on, like they love to joke on that. Look at how the fathers run out on their children. You know, these people are savages. So what we did what we did to them? They don't deserve any better. It makes them feel better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we are one of the only people in this country that you can think of that gets judged almost exclusively by the worst of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what we do in terms of bad things, you know, and misdeeds and everything, everybody else does too. You know what I mean? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
talking about in proportion. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about the nature of people, right? The nature of human beings will always be that we have a tendency towards violence. We have a tendency towards being, inconsiderate, inconsiderate to each other, you know, things like that. We have that, right? But with black people, it's always got to be magnified what it is that we do. Don't
Mm-hmm.
look at what we're doing over here, you know, because at least we're better than you. Like that's always been the attitude, you know,
Right.
because look at you. But the problem is, like I said, it's like the risk is that we believe the worst of ourselves, right? So if you see white people over here and they're talking a certain way, then we got to be talking like this because we have to be opposite of that in order to identify ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
when you see someone who's talking the King's English, you see someone who's talking the way they might have been taught in school, then they'll accuse you of talking white. You're talking white. Look at you. You know, you're trying to be white. What are you doing talking about sci-fi? You're trying to be like them. It's like, bro, I exist totally independent of what they do. This was my life experience, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to represent my life experience. I'm not going to represent something else to make you feel better. This is who I am. This is how I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't have an exclusive ownership of that, but for some reason, too many of us think that they do. And so they're the go-to when it comes to all of this shit right here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so much of what they talk about concerns us. You know, we're the topic of conversation. So you would think you would want to hear it more here. You know, if Disney is misusing black characters and underdeveloping them, why would you spend so much time listening to them clown black people than listen
Okay.
to black people trying to address that ourselves?
Okay. Perfect. I asked Jay the same question last night. Do you ever see the big dogs coming to our sector to us to ask us to get our point of view? Say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Because once again, I keep forgetting whose panel it was on, but somebody said Josh spoke highly of the recast T'Challa. And I'm like, I don't want no white dude speaking for us and our characters. Like, how dare you? So do you? And I asked Jay. Jay said no. Do you ever think you'll see a Disney rep come ask you, hey, I see what you guys doing over there. Hey, we got plans. What do you think about this? What's your take on
No,
this?
because
Where do
they're
you
too
think we should go with
busy.
this
They're
character?
too busy exploiting us. All right, they're gonna ask, but they're gonna ask the wrong people. You know, that's the thing. That's why Nate Moore is where Nate Moore is.
Okay.
You know, and if you
Okay.
listen to how Nate Moore speaks and you listen to the way he carries himself and things like that, and it's funny I'm making that point because I was just talking about talking white, right? But Nate Moore, uh, if you listen to him speak, not just the way he speaks, but how he speaks, the way he thinks, basically, he has no commitment whatsoever. He's the industry, you know,
Yeah.
but he's also the black voice in the room, you know, and he gives them the green light to do the things that they should be doing. He gives them the green light to kill T'Challa. Like I remember talking about that, and he said specifically, we never even considered recasting. You know,
I
he said it was
remember
a
I remember that
yeah.
interaction. He was being interviewed, and some people spoke up and asked him, and he was just like he was so whitewashed, and I was like, wow, that's him. because I didn't know what he looked like. I
Yeah.
knew he was a brother, but I was like, damn, like you've been on that side for too long. You, okay, I get what you're saying. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your point.
Yeah, and unfortunately, these are the voices that they listen to. They're not going to, and they know we're here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They know that we're here. If they can shout out they, them over there, they know that we're here. It's like this is one of the reasons why in the early days you saw Fatal J on some of those panels. You saw me on some of those panels and stuff like that because we were there. We were there. It's like I said, what we're facing now, or the way the fandom is now, isn't the way that it was back then. Because back then, the audience wasn't determining what they do or dictating
Okay.
what they do. So
Okay.
it was a much more objective space. You know what I mean? So we didn't have those beefs until probably, I know, Fatal was talking about George Floyd, and that definitely was a jump off, to a lot of the changes in sensibilities.
Mhm.
But even before that, I remember, maybe it might have been around the same time. I remember when the Batman came out,
Okay.
and one of them specifically went through the movie trying to point out how many good white people were in the movie, right? How
Really
many good
interesting.
white people were in the Batman? How many white people actually had lines in the Batman? I'm like, what the fuck? That's not what we used to do. It's like before we were critiquing these movies,
Okay.
it was the ones that we used to go against that were counting how many black people and how many lines and all of that stuff. That was what they did. Now all of a sudden, it's what we're doing. You know, now it's not we anymore because it became about how they're doing the white man wrong. That
Okay.
like the shift, the
Yes.
focus shifted to what this, from what it used to be, where it used to be, we don't like what they're doing, because they're weaponizing all of this against all of us.
Okay. Kind of off topic, but do they have a point when they say white men in their movies or in their narratives are being reduced, emasculated, humiliated? Because I'm seeing more and more rhetoric from them in that regards on how their masculinity is portrayed. Hell, I'm seeing it with the Superman. They're pissed that Lois is barking at Superman. Superman's emotional and he's not stoic. So, do they have a
Yeah.
legit argument on that point alone?
Objectively speaking, yes, they do. I,
Okay.
I would say they do because here's the thing: what the industry is doing ultimately is going against masculinity. They're
Okay.
attacking the patriarchy. All
Okay.
right, that's what they're doing. And like it or not, the white man in America is the last bit of the patriarchy that we have in this country. The black community is a matriarchy. There are a bunch of female headed households, single black female headed households in the black community. And I was raised in one, so I'm not saying, and I love my mother and I respect her very much. So I'm not saying that it's just the worst thing in the world, but we as men are supposed to have a place in our home. We're supposed to be able to be there for our women and for our children,
Mhm.
But I think that in our community, we're way too comfortable seeing Nakia raise Tabasted on her own,
Okay.
whereas the white community would never, ever go for
Right.
that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Lois Lane is going to raise Superman's child on her own, and the character is killed indefinitely. We've seen Superman die before, in the comics and stuff. I guess even in the movies, but he's always coming back. You
He's
know what I
always come
mean?
back. Yeah.
It's like T'Challa, he's just gone. And a lot of people in our community are happy with it that way.
Let me ask you. Same theory I share with Jay. I've always thought they were not prepared for the impact that first Black Panther was going to have, literally worldwide, and raise the vibration and the optics on black men. I'm gonna say I think they did that on purpose with Wakanda Forever. It just so happens that Chadwick died. Had he not died, I think they would have found a way to kind of reduce him regardless. I don't think we get a Wakanda Forever type, but I think over time they would have found a ways to minimize and reduce his impact. Um, what do you say when I say that to you?
I actually agree with you. I
Okay.
agree with you 100%. Shoot, man, I wasn't even ready for the impact that movie had. You
Okay.
know, when I went there, I was just going there as a comic book head.
Okay.
It's like I was looking, like the trailers look good and everything. Lupita Nyong'o, fine as shit. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, let me go in here and check out, Lupita and
Yeah, yeah,
just see
yeah.
what's going on.
Right.
Chadwick, he was smooth as hell. You know what I mean? So I knew I was going to enjoy the movie, but I was not prepared for the cultural impact the movie was going to have.
Hmm.
And in the run up to the movie, I remember doing a video about the kids who were being treated to screenings of the movies,
Yeah.
of the movie, and they were dancing, they were
Yeah.
happy, and I was just saying, there's something here. You know what I mean? Like this is really resonating with them. They're loving it. They're giving them something that we really underestimated how much they needed that.
Hmm.
So these kids were excited. And I tell the story a million times in the middle of the movie, my son tugging on my arm, talking about, Dad, after the movie, can we go get an action figure? We got to go to Toys R Us. It's like, okay, can we just finish watching the movie? But
Yeah.
he was so amped, to do this. And I've taken him to see movies so many times. I never had that reaction from him before,
Wow.
but he was
Wow.
so excited. There was something there, and it did surprise me. But I do feel like the studio was not ready for that because I'll tell you something else. I was talking about, like, I didn't know also that there were petitions that were made around that time, that there were certain organizations that wanted the studio to give a certain percentage of what they made off of Black Panther. And I don't know, kind of put it towards building in the community, kind of like giving back,
I
that type
heard.
of thing.
Okay, I was okay. I heard something like that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it became like a real problem for the studio because I don't think they saw that coming at all. So
Hmm.
now it was like, of the over $1 billion this movie made, you got Black organizations saying, okay, now what do we get out of this? Because you said that this movie was to uplift Black people, the Black community, all of this stuff. In the final scene, you saw T'Challa doing an outreach center, in Oakland, at the final shot of the movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
So obviously this is about, positivity, uplifting. So is this just something you're going to do on the screen,
Hmm.
or recognizing what the movie talked about, being stuck in the hood, no hope, violence, Killmonger and
Right.
everything? Are we going to do something with this? Are we going to
Yeah.
run with this momentum?
Right.
And I don't think the studio was willing to do that. So all of that momentum was crushed by Wakanda Forever. No one was talking about that. We were just happy once again just to see ourselves. So no building had taken place. Just good feelings and, you know, remember Chadwick. That was it.
Okay. Do you think? Well, let me jump ahead. So we got the X Men franchise coming eventually. I think that's probably the most racially inclusive, diversive comic book series. I mean, you got freaks and geeks from everywhere in the X Men, and it's always been like that. Do you think there's a chance to kind of recapture that essence with the new T'Challa and Storm merger or storyline if they do it? Given everything you just said today, do we finally get a chance to see a powerful black couple online, on screen, not bickering, fighting, no emasculation, no. Yeah, do we get to see what we the whole what
I,
movie is that? Billy D and Diana Ross. Do we get to see something like that?
Mahogany.
Yeah, Mahogany.
Yeah.
Yes, do we get to see that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Yo, I remember, my parents. That was smooth. That was
Hey, that
smooth.
was.
But Billy D was that was a totally impossible level for your average man to achieve. You know what I mean? His smoothness in that movie. But yo, I think that honestly, in the MCU, I believe it's too late. They've
Really?
they've lost they've lost my confidence in the MCU, which is the reason why I'm more likely to say reboot Black Panther, like reboot it with a whole new creative team, a whole new studio. I know it's not possible or it's not likely because Marvel owns them, and stuff like that. But I'm sorry, I love. I had a good time with Sinners. I respect Ryan Coogler.
Okay.
I think he's a visionary, but
Okay.
I think he badly mishandled Black Panther, and I think he's too close to it emotionally.
Was that who do we blame for that? Him or Nate Moore? Right? Because Nate Moore was the one that kind of gave him the inclination of like this is the direction we want to go in, so make it happen.
Yeah, I blame both of them. You know,
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I think that Kevin Feige was only going to go in the direction that his in-house Negroes wanted him to go. You know,
Okay.
like they gave him permission to get out there and say that we're not going to recast T'Challa. We're actually going to kill him, and
Mm.
we're going to kill him in the same way as the actor,
Mm.
bro. All I ask people to do is think about yourself as a man. All right, would you ever want that to happen? You know, if you're a man, you kept your illness to yourself because you're a private person. You know,
Right.
you kept your pain to yourself. Is it ever cool to mock the way that you die in a character that you played? Remember, he also played Jackie Robinson,
That's
Thurgood
right.
Marshall, James Brown, but you want to forever tie him to T'Challa, who died the same way as you, and people
Yeah, and
somehow think that's an honor.
it was weird watching the movie and seeing the mural as they do the funeral procession. I'm like, this is morbid. Like, who are we celebrating? The character or the man's death? Like, it was so just. I was so not cool with it. I was like, this is the wrong move. Wrong move.
No, it really is. But like I've talked about before, I think that America, and that includes Black America, America's favorite black man is a dead black man because they
Mm.
can use us however they want. You know, they can make us stand for whatever they want, and that's the reason why they elevate George Floyd. But if something were to happen to hardworking black men like you and I, nobody would be talking about us. You
Right.
know, it's like they need for it to be somebody who was a career criminal, who was on drugs, you know, and think they need it to be that person, you know, because that's the one that's going to get white people riled up, you know, because, oh, you're going to elevate this guy, this criminal and stuff like that. Once again, America's unresolved racial issues. They don't want to see us. They don't want to hear us. You know, I did a video before called "If They Want Our Opinion, They'll Give It to Us." They don't want to listen to us,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why they rather, like I said, give all of the views, all of the money to those they over there. We are the dangerous ones, us, you know, the ones who are not going to toe that line, who are going to tell the truth regardless of what other people are seeing over there. Like, I'm not just going to say something just because it's the opposite, just so it can be the opposite of what they're saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? George Floyd, God rest him. He was a career criminal. He was a drug addict. Guess what? I got uncles. Like I said, my pops came out of Marcy Projects. He's one of the only ones who made something out of himself. My uncle Tito, my uncle Bart, my uncle Joseph. You know, it's like a lot of them fell. You know, but guess what? They were still good people. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
they did crimes, but when I was young, they would always say to me, yo, Mark, don't do what I did. You know what I mean? I might never get myself right, you know,
Wow.
and a lot of them
Wow.
never did, you know, but
Wow.
they knew enough to know that they didn't want to be the example, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And that's what I'm talking about. In and out of jail. One of them got beat up by the cops, had a bottle broken over his head. Still not right. You know what I mean? But and I believe the same of George Floyd because he actually did some mentoring. You know, it's like he was trying to make something of himself. He just couldn't beat his demons. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we all know what a drug addict has to go through. He couldn't beat his demons. So his life ended the way a lot of lives end that are like that. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean that he deserved it, but he definitely doesn't deserve to be the butt of anybody's joke, getting dragged. If you got a problem with George Floyd being exalted, blame your fucking media because they're the
Mm.
ones who did it. George
Right.
Floyd didn't ask for that. If George Floyd, I believe, if George Floyd had a choice in a say in how he's remembered, he would make himself a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But just saying that he was a drug addict, um, that's not being a coon, man. That's not being a Sambo. That's not being disloyal. It's teaching our kids what road not to go down. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when I make mistakes, I always tell my son, don't make the mistakes that I made. You know, I'm a
Right.
divorcee. Obviously, I made some mistakes. You know, I was trying to be married forever. You know, I was trying to have thousands of kids, as as Method Man says.
Yeah.
Walk
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
dogs. Have thousands of kids. But unfortunately, the marriage fell through, right? For various reasons. Things she did wrong, things I did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to give my son the benefit of my experience. Not that I know it all, but I definitely know where I made some missteps, and I don't want to see him make those missteps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, So, to me, it's just that simple, bro.
And you get dating advice and marriage advice as well when you come visit this show. So, um, where do we go from here? Lessons learned from Ironheart, and where do we go from here? What does it look like to you in the next 5 to 10 years, as far as what they're going to put out content wise when it comes to us?
Well, they're going to keep doing the same thing. We're going to see another Ironheart. We're going to see another Acolyte. We're going to see, they're going to keep trying to run that, man. They're going to keep doing it until we say enough. We're not doing this, man. But we have to get to work in our own audience, in our own community, to say that just because it's a black face doesn't mean that you owe them any allegiance. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like you don't have to. Like I just hear too many people saying that. Yeah, it's a sister, and as long as there's a black woman there, I'm gonna be supporting it. It's like you got to have some type of standard. You know, the sister is working. She's got a job and everything, but that can't, I mean, I got a job, but you're here calling me a coon and a sambo. You're not going to support me. You know what I mean? so
Right.
it, so it's got to be a little bit deeper than that. But that's where our first movement lies, to expect more. It's like if you have a sister who continues to go to abusive relationship after abusive relationship, and we all know people like that.
Yeah.
She's not going to get any better until she realizes that she deserves better.
Right.
you know Otherwise, it's always going to be the same thing. Dude might have a different face, but it's always the same situation. And it's going to be like that with us. This, I call it the second coming of black exploitation, because that's what they're doing. We're not owning anything, we're not creating anything. Ironheart is making two white men money because they're the ones who created it, they're the ones who own it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're the ones fighting over it. How does that make any sense whatsoever? It's like you can accept the positive image, but you have to be critical of the image. You just can't accept it. Like if it's done right and it's done by other people or whatever, cool. It's like they did a good job. They represent it fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you see that it's some type of a stereotypical image, it's a damaging image, it's an underdeveloped image, then you should have the right to be able to say that's what it is, and you can do better than that. You know what I mean? So, I think that's where it
I'm
starts.
working.
It starts with us realizing that we deserve better. Our kids deserve better.
Okay. Damn it, she made me lose my train of thought. Busting up in here and shit. Shit. Okay. Okay. What does enough look like? So when we say enough is enough, okay, what does that look like? Is that monetary? Is that boycotts? Is that us using our platforms? What is that? What would that look like to you? What would make you feel good and say, you know what, I think we're having an effect on the corporations. They're listening to us.
They don't respect anything but money, and the only way that that's going to happen is if we cultivate the talent in our own homes. you
Okay.
know like I tell the story about how my comics got ripped up when I was a kid, because like I said, I see too many kids are still going through it. Like too many kids still think they don't have a place. That's why I'm proud to be a part of the Dark Council. I'm proud, of Fatal J doing Ninja Blast. I'm proud of the Majinai. I'm proud of Lord Callus. I'm proud of Abu Nas. Abu Nas is going to be doing a hip hop project that coincides with Game of Thrones. So in other words, he's going to be doing a hip hop narrative for
Oh, that's
Game of
what's up.
Thrones.
That's what's
You
up.
know, Abu Nas has got crazy, crazy skill, man. You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay.
And when he spits, it's like the old days.
Okay.
So he's going to be coming with that project, and this is what we have to cultivate, because I'm not interested in trying to be accepted by people who are not going to accept us, and they're
Gotcha.
not going to accept us until we come from a position of power. That's why I
Gotcha.
do like this on all of my streams. I don't do like this. I do like this because this is a breakthrough, bro. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
That's what that's supposed to be. And that's the only way that this works. I remember, what was it, back in the day when MTV didn't play black people, and I remember Michael Jackson said the most gangster thing in the world. He was like, yeah, they said they weren't going to play, Off the Wall or whatever. He said he went back to the lab, he came up with Thriller, and he was like, let him ignore this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
of course, they couldn't ignore it. So it's like you have to see the best in yourself first, and then they'll come along because they can make money off of you.
Hmm.
Which is, and I know that this is a take that, in the past has gotten me misunderstood, but I do feel two things, right? I feel like integration was a mistake when we did it. Like, I do understand
Oh,
why we
yeah,
did it,
yeah. I agree.
but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
it was a mistake when we
yeah.
did it because we had to prove to ourselves first
Hmm.
that we were bringing something invaluable to the table.
Right.
Something, truly valuable. I mean, so we needed that, you know, and we needed to see ourselves owning businesses, and all of that. We needed to see ourselves excelling at school before we crossed over. What is welfare? Why do we need welfare? We are productive people. We are an intelligent people. We just forgot that, you know,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
rest of the world, they're more than happy to help us to forget that,
Mhm.
But if we don't remind ourselves, man, we're going to be lost.
Do you see more of an acceptance of young people and embracing into their geekdom, the nerd culture, since you were a kid? Do you see that a little bit more open now? You see less friction, less pushback for the youth today?
Only recently. Like I
Okay.
said, I truly believe that seeing us in these spaces is
Okay.
helping because we have a whole industry against us. You know, um, white people have a whole industry for them.
Yeah.
The industry, like they see their Miss America traditionally.
Yeah.
It's like they see their leading man. It goes back when Errol Flynn was doing his thing. Way back Errol Flynn was doing his thing, we were, yeah, boss, okay, boss. We didn't have the benefit of 100 years in film of leading men,
Right.
which is why Sidney Poitier was a big deal, and Denzel and Forrest Whitaker and all of the Will Smith, all of the ones who came, you know, unfortunately you can still count them on two hands, but that's the type of head start they have with their image,
Hmm.
with us, our representation for the longest time was seeing you know Roscoe or Pookie getting arrested on the evening news. Yeah, I know him. Damn, they got him. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so we're very much still playing catch up with that. And I think that like I said, I think it's very important now, the way YouTube is, for us to be seen, which is the reason why a lot of us, most of us, have lower numbers in comparison. I don't believe we're being pushed the way that we should be pushed. I think we're
Hmm.
being subdued in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
and that is a problem. Because we're not shouting each other out. What you're doing is positive beyond belief because you brought somebody on who you initially thought was a token. You know what I mean?
You know
And we
what?
sat
He's
down.
telling this story. Okay, let me just say. Let me just.
No, bro. No, 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 no. No, you got to hold that now, bro.
I'm gonna hold it, but let me get everybody what happened. I came late to everybody, and I remember
Hmm.
seeing you. And was it you and Jay? Or was it on Yellow Flag?
Hmm.
I don't. And this was at pretty much when shit was going left with the Star Wars thing, and I'm just sitting here like, because I know it's gonna go left. It's never gonna work out in our favor when they bring us on, for whatever reason. And same thing when I came across Eric July, I was like, why y'all over there? Why? Because initially I know it's not gonna work out, right? And this is before I even knew you guys, and I made snap judgments, which I should have made, but I was so just confused, like, but they don't they understand how this is gonna go, right? The wife are gonna turn on them, right? They're gonna talk crazy, given the right the right circumstances. So I hold the L.
Uh,
I'm so glad I met
no, no.
y'all.
I'm messing with you, bro. See, the thing is that I've always believed that we are necessary in this space because once we're not in this space, that's when what's happening now starts to happen. You know what I
Yes,
mean? You
yes,
notice it was four, no, 10 white guys on this panel just firing at will
yeah,
on black people. You know what I mean? Not one black person on that panel. And that's how it happens, man. It's like we are necessary because we're the ones who say, "Yo, cut that shit out, bro."
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like get back in line, get back in line. But it gets to the point now where they've given themselves permission to do this, and it's not so much hurtful as much as it is, y'all just disregarded everything that we were building, all of us, because you got enamored by clicks,
Mm-hmm.
and that's basically what it is. Because if you ever go one on one with any of these people, they ain't gonna talk that bullshit, bro. You know what I mean? They ain't gonna talk all that. And the also, the fact of the matter is that I got to shout out my man Drunk 3PO, okay? Because moving in that space, right? Drunk 3PO was one of the ones. He was the one who said, you know what we need more black voices, like we need to hear from, the people who are actually being talked about here, you know
Mm.
so he hooked up with, with Abu Nas, with Fatal J, with the Majinai, and then they wanted to get me in because I was just doing my own thing. I just gotten divorced and stuff. I wasn't trying to hear none of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But after a while I was like, okay, I got some time, you know what I mean? Abu was cool. Basically just got on the phone, and I always tell him, you just threatened me, bro. You were just like, listen, man, we're doing this stream. You're going to be on it. Click. Abu is from Brooklyn. He ain't trying to hear none of that, right? He's like, you're going to be down with us. So I'm like, oh shit, I think I got jumped in, right?
Okay.
So, but it was Drunk 3PO, a white man, you know, and then he's an exceptional dude too. But, you know, he was the one who just said, listen, y'all should all be together. You know what I mean? And I kind of knew that it was going to happen sooner or later, that like minds would find each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to give him his props because, it's a fact. It's a fact. He was the one who wanted to have us on his channel,
Mm-hmm.
and talk these things out. And it just kind of went from there. So we kind of just took it, man, and we just found this chemistry and this mutual respect and love, man. We've had some
That's what's
dog
up.
fights, but we always respect each other at the end of the day. Those are some fucking good dudes, man.
Yeah.
And
I
Lorena
would
too,
just.
because Lorena came in, and she's
I
worth all
like
of us
her.
put
I like
together.
her. I be stalking her channel. Don't tell her though. I be stalking her channel. Yeah. She's got a stalker. So
Me too.
hey, she speaks Spanish. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah. Talk that talk.
And
But
Lorena don't back down from nobody. She's a one
no,
woman army.
she's spicy. Spice is good. Spice is good. No, it was just
Hmm.
I was same thing I was telling Josh. Like, do you think they'll ever invite us over for like not even a knockdown drag out, but like we'll take on all challengers. If you disagree with what we're saying and how we're saying it, come one, come all. And I think I guess maybe that's a pipe dream, because like you said, 101 they won't all that bravado shit goes out the window when you
Right.
actually face with the people that you're talking about.
Yeah, because you got a choice. It's like I said, I've been on those panels and stuff like that. I know these dudes. You got a choice. Either you're going to sit there and yuck it up
Yeah,
and just keep on taking everything that they're throwing, or you're going to be a self-respecting human being, right?
yeah.
And that's how I feel. We are human beings, and we deserve the respect and the dignity of human beings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now everybody can see our complexions and stuff like that, but what you can't see is the measure of our heart, you know. And you won't see that until you're sitting there like, yeah, black people, we don't have fathers. We're not there for our kids. Now, if you're
Yeah,
gonna sit
yeah.
there and do that shit, well, you just told them everything they need to know. But if you're the type of person where you're on the panel, they ain't gonna dare go there
Mm-hmm.
unless they know that they can. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I've been on many of those panels before. We can cut it up. I know something about, like cutting edge humor and stuff. I act a fool on my channel a lot.
Yeah.
I do a lot of self, ribbing and all that. So there's a certain degree that you can take, right? But when it gets to be a running joke, an ongoing joke, and you know that you wouldn't do that to them, and
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't be allowed to do it to them,
Right, right, right.
then you know that you're off balance. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And we can't have that. We can't have that. So it is what it is, man. I think that, like I said, they're in a position. A lot of people who find themselves in that position, they're in that position because they don't want to lose their audience, you know. And I think that as long as you don't have a conscience, as long as you can tell yourself it's just jokes, and as long as you can have yourself an in-house Negro or a couple of them that can just keep on um, co-signing you, then there's
Mm-hmm.
no reason for you to check yourself. You know what I mean? It just looks like the rest of us are being overly sensitive.
Okay. Is their audience the market? Are they the normies the people that spend the monies, the majority of the demographics that don't want to see me, you, Chill, Jay, whoever have an opinion, or have characters that look like us, be successful, be upright, be stoic. Is that, are they just catering to what the market wants? Are
No,
they a
not
prison?
at all.
Okay, okay, okay,
I think they created a monster themselves, you
okay.
know, and they're slaves and they're prisoners to that monster. I came up in this culture, right? I have collected comics. I've traded comics with white people, with Spanish people, with Indian people. It's like I know what this culture is. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And that's the reason why when they started doing all of that, virtue signaling and race swapping, I said at the time, you're fucking with the wrong fandom because we already got over that. You know what I mean? Like we
Okay,
all watched Deep Space Nine and we all loved Captain Cisco. It's like
right.
we all watched these same shows. We had a healthy appreciation for one another. It's like, unfortunately, they fell into that trap. You know, a lot of them fell into the trap of arguing too much against race swapping to the
Mm-hmm.
point where they lost the view that it's the studios that did this, not the black people. You
Okay,
know, so it's the just like what I said before about George Floyd. It's like you're going to continue to make fun of George Floyd, ignoring that it was the media that created George Floyd. It was
mm-hmm.
the government that decided they were going to do all of this DEI stuff in answer to George Floyd. They politicized his memory, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just the same way as they weaponize black people. So it makes it look like black people are behind the race swapping. You know, if you see, um, if you see Black Captain America, right? Instead of going at the studio, instead of going at the people who wrote the comic, because honestly, I didn't like it in the comic either. So people
Okay,
say that, oh, it was in the comic. I believe he should have stayed the Falcon in the comic too.
okay,
But instead of going at the studio, it begins and ends with clowning black people because
okay.
that's who you see on screen. It's like you have to be pretty fucking simple if that's where you think your argument is. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the argument is not that, and you're losing your credibility that way. And I know plenty of white viewers who are tired of that shit too. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So that's how I know that that's not the market because there are plenty of white people out here now who are actually making videos going at certain aspects of the fandom because they're tired of it. They're tired of thinking that, or the same way we're tired of being misrepresented, they're tired of being misrepresented.
Okay,
We're not all like that. You know what I
okay,
mean? And they're
okay,
not all like that. I got plenty who come to my channel every day, and we have the dialogue and everything. They support what I do and all of that. So I know better.
cool. All right, last question. Can AI bridge the gap, or should we be using AI to kind of make up the difference that we're not seeing on the big screen? Is this the perfect time to say, okay, urban folk, black folk, this AI thing is a game changer. It's going to level the playing field. Get to it, because now what I'm starting to see is them using AI to keep the same narratives going. I'm like, well, okay, it's time for us. We got to fight back. It's time to shoot back. So how do you what's your thoughts on the AI as far as independent
Uh,
creators and moving forward with characters of color?
yeah, I wouldn't tell people what to do and what not to do with that. I'm not the biggest fan of AI. You
Okay.
know what I mean? I feel like I said before, there are certain people who need all the help they can get from the industry. I really do feel like we are a very special people in that if we know who we are, if we dig down deep inside of what makes us the best of who we are, we can't be replicated through any type of AI. We can't be like, you know what I mean? Like we are the issue. We are the problem, for the industry. That's the
Okay.
reason why they don't like to hear our voices. So what we need to do is speak a little bit louder. What we need to do is listen to each other when we speak a little bit louder and have a
Okay.
softening of the heart for each other. Stop all of this. You're a coon, you're a Sambo. It's like, bro, as long as we're doing that, we're going nowhere, bro.
Hmm.
Nowhere. Are there people who tap dance, for white people? Of course there are. But at this point, we're just pointing out anybody who disagrees with us. Like I said, but with not even really thinking,
Hmm.
without even really listening. Like if you like, I know, I'm just talking, out here to a screen right now, but I know in my heart, if you call me a coon, then you fucking lost the plot completely. You know what I mean? Like you don't know me in my history. in how I came up, the way I was raised, the people who I've helped and who have helped me. You don't know what's kept me awake at night crying when I look at the TV and I see another one of our children have died. You know what I mean? I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us have become desensitized to that. But God cursed me because I could never be desensitized to it. You know, every time I see it, it puts a knife through my heart. And I think, how can we fix this? How does this happen? How do we not love our children enough to protect them? You know, like, why do we keep accepting this bullshit from these people who are determined to keep us as an underclass? We'll never get out of this until we start seeing our value. We have to see our value because nobody else will. So stop looking over there. Stop telling them that Black Lives Matter. We have to believe it first. And from what I've seen, not enough of us do. You know what I mean?
Man, that's why I call you the Chuck D of this shit, man. Shit. So, Mark with a C. Brethren, shout your channel out. Where can the people find you? All that good stuff.
Very simple. Mark with a C, MARC. That's the way my mom named me. A lot of guys are MARK. So I did she named me MARC. So my whole life, all I ever tell people when they try to write out my name, that's Mark with a C. Mark with a C. That's how you spell it. So I always knew that was going to be my screen name, my handle. So you come to my channel and yeah, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to piss you off, but these are the things that go on in my mind. And that's what I say at the beginning of every video. I am the gospel according to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he, just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. And then I say, I hope all has been well with you because I surely do. You know, there's a lot out here that's messing with us these days. There's a lot of hopelessness. There's a lot of reasons why we wouldn't feel good about each other. And I'll tell you something scary. A lot of our kids are not proud to be Black. I can tell you that. Okay.
Mm.
They're just not. I am very much plugged in with my son and his friends. He's got a diverse group of friends, but I listen to the things that they say. They're tired of being misrepresented in videos. They're tired of seeing kids like them doing flash mobs and all of that stuff. It's like they're tired of being seen as thugs, and they're tired of the kids who believe that they are thugs. They want to be better. They want to feel better. They want the world to know that they're better. So this is how we start. We start by talking to each other. We might say some things that piss each other off, but if you can identify that a person has at least good intention, instead of just automatically dismissing them as a sambo, you know, or a coon or something, you
Yeah.
might actually learn something. Because real quick, one thing I noticed too is that the ones that we call sambo and coons the most tend to be the ones who actually are in a position of influence, in a position of power. To some degree, you have to ask yourself, what do they know? Even if you don't agree with them philosophically or
Mm-hmm.
politically, what
Mm.
do they know that got them in a position of influence? Because those are some nuggets, some gems that you might be able to pick up so that you can incorporate them inside of yourself and come up with your own philosophy, your own political leaning. You don't have to be a clone of that person. So stop just dismissing them as a coon and just ask yourself, how did you get to be head of state? How did you
Yeah.
get to be a Supreme Court judge? How did you get to be a Surgeon General? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I don't care if you work for Trump. Just tell me what you know. But we're not doing that, you
Okay,
know?
wait. I can't let you go on a cliffhanger. So if they're having problems self-identifying as Black, so then what is their recourse or the next course of action? How do they get over that? Or I mean, that's fascinating because I work with kids, but I don't get the chance to work around a bunch of young Black males like that. I'm more surrounded by whites and Asians and Indians. So when I do see a little Black boy, I tend to gravitate towards him. But he's got so many issues going on at home that I'm just like, I can't work with this kid. Not the way it's set up. So how do they navigate that?
Something Sly. I also talked on video years ago about how, for the majority of my life, I felt like I was a mistake, you know? And I felt that way because I actually was. You know what I mean? It's like my parents were very young when they had me and stuff. And my pops, like I said, coming out of the projects, he was a roughneck, he was a thug. So a lot of times he would say, never wanted you anyway, right? And like I said, we're cool now. You know, my
Right.
pops is a good man. He's been saved. You know, he's in the church. You know, I love him and I respect him. You know, but he used to whoop my ass back in the day,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was worth nothing, absolutely nothing.
Mm.
Okay, every other kid that I used to see on the street, I would say to myself, I bet my father would want him to be his son, you know,
Mm.
better than me, right? I know what I'm talking about. I recognize it in the faces of our kids. I know what it means to be rock bottom in my soul. And I know that the only way out of it is to be human. Human. You can be proud to be black, but you have to recognize your humanity first.
Mm.
Because growing up dark skinned, all I ever heard, you black motherfucker. You know what I mean? You're black ass this, you're black ass that. um, Back when I was coming up, it was all about being light skinned. Everybody loved Albie Shore and Christopher Williams and stuff like that. And it just was what it was. And thank God I had a moment where I just had to realize if there's a God out here and he is what we say that he is, he doesn't make mistakes. That means that I'm supposed to be here.
Mm.
I'm supposed to be alive. I have every right to be here as much as anybody else. I should be able to be loved. You know what I mean? I should be able to be successful, you know, and things like that. I had to realize that the hard way. I had to be human because I can't be somebody else's idea of black because it means too many things to too many different people. You know what
Mm.
I mean? To some people, they'll say black is beautiful. To some people, all they see is shit brown. I can't listen to either one. I've got to be human. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I
Okay.
got to be me. And that's what these kids need to hear. All right? Because you can't live up or live down to anybody else. But the world is full of people who want you to either live up to something or live down to something. You got to find it in yourself what it is that you're here for. But you are here for something because you're a human being, you know, and your heart pumps blood just like everybody else. Nobody gets to tell you who you are and who's better than you or who's worse than you. The only one who can determine that is you. And if you have the choice between saying that that person is better than me or I'm better than that person, I'm sorry. You're going to have to make the choice that you're better than that person because the world is making you do that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But
Mm.
in your heart, you have to know you can only be who you are. You know, you can only be who you are. And people will make what they want to make of you. You know, if them want to say this, you know, oh, there's no such thing as black fathers. Black fathers, I want a father. I'm a father every fucking day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every time my son leaves me, every single time. I don't care if he's going out to walk the dog. Love you, dad. I shit you not. I must be doing something right. All right. I have to be because there was a time when I thought that I didn't belong here. Now I have a son telling me he loves me every single time. I never thought I would see these days. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And that's what these kids need to know. They need to know that there are days ahead of them where they do have a life, they do have love in their lives, and they have a place here. You know, no matter who's calling them a coon, or who's calling them a Sambo, or who's calling them a nigger, or who's calling them whatever, they have to be strong here because the
Mm.
world is going to try to do that. They're going to either have you living up to something or living down to something. You just have to be the human being that God created you to be.
And we're gonna leave it right there. Mark with a C. Big dog, thank you for coming through as always. As always. Until
Bro,
next time, my man.
thank you so much. Thank
Hey,
you so
thank you
much.
for coming through anytime. Yes.
Big shout out to everybody out there. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. Big shout out to Dark Council. We here, baby. This is what we do.
Lorena, I'm watching you. All right, bro. Have a good night. Yeah. Mark with a C. Please go sub to his channel. That's one of the guys. I'm slowly making my rounds, getting back to everybody. So I'm gonna reach out to a couple other brothers and Abu Nas. Hey. Sir. Wait. Abu Nas, give me your email. Drop your email in the chat if you don't mind, so I can reach out to you and set up something to have you on because I wanna, you know, convalesce with all the brethren. So if you get a chance, just drop your email in the chat for me, please, if you don't mind, so I can reach out to you. So yeah, with that being said, yeah, happy what's today? Today is what? Happy Saturday. I'm losing my days because there's always so much to do, so losing my days. For sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. Listen, all my guys got a place here. They ain't gotta ask. All they gotta do is just say when, and I got a spot for them. So it's nothing. It's nothing for them to come back. Um, yeah, Abu. If you get a chance to drop your email in the chat for me, brethren, so I can hit you up. In the meantime, yeah, I'm just gonna wait for the email from drop the email. Did I shoot off fireworks? Hell no. Did you see Homeboy's hand? Did you see? Did you see that nigga's hand? His hand was like this. That nigga didn't have no hand. He had bones. That dude had bones sticking out. I ain't shot no fireworks since I was a kid, man. Nah, I ain't. I sit down when the fireworks come out. I went for a walk last night, and the Dre Max show is a great channel. All right, I'll check them out. Gotta check them out. Gotta check them out. Yeah, real quick. Let me hit up everybody that dropped a super chat. I'm sorry. I didn't forget y'all. I didn't forget y'all. See, yo, thank you for the two. I just subbed to this guys this week. Great channel. Oh yeah, shout out to Mark. Yes indeed. Mark with a C. Mark with a C. Mark with a C. Nick, thank you for the two in the chat. You can come help me cut up these uprooted trees. Nick, you just look like you work hard. I'm cool. Nick look like he got some hard work for you. Nick be like, you want to make some money? Yeah, what I gotta do? I need you to do this. I need you to punch some holes in some fence hole punching. Oh, I can do that. Until you get to the hole puncher. That'd be some hard back breaking labor. I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm good. Yeah, that fool, his joint. Listen, he had nothing but bones. Listen, there's no reconstructive surgery. All right, he literally had the bones in his fingers sticking out, and he's just sitting there because clearly he's in shock, and the pain hasn't kicked in, and just niggas, man. That's what they do. That's what they do. Yes, send all to his room. Yes, that's a soft no. Like that's a soft no. That's one of those no's you just don't say. Your eyes just say no for you. Like so. Okay, I gotta check out Abu Naz's channel. I'll reach out to him. I'll hit him up that way. Abu Naz. Hold up. Is this him? This is him. Bet. Okay. Let me see the is there an email? Oh, got it. Traffic lights. I am a human. Okay, cool. Verify. Submit. Oh, well, let me hit him up right now then. Okay. No, Apple, I don't want you to do anything. I don't want nothing. No Apple intelligence. No, thank you. I'm cool. Let's do it this way. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm about to email homeboy. Bear with me. Okay, I'm gonna get out of here. I got some stuff to do. May come back late. I'm gonna come back tonight for sure and do an F3 stream. So shout out to my guest Mark with a C. Please go sub to his channel. Fatal J was last night. Sub to Fatal J. I'm gonna reach out to Abu Naz. I'm gonna reach out to Chillmonger. All the guys. So I'm gonna reach out to all the guys, and bring them through. Oh, tell me, how trash was it, sir? How trash was Ballerina? I told y'all it was trash. I told you. She's 5 feet nothing, and the whole time, remember, she's training. The instructor's like, fight like a girl, and then she ends up forgetting all that and fights like a man and beats up all these big brawny men. And I'm just like, I can't. Like, it's okay for me to suspend disbelief, but I can't. You're asking me to dumb myself down to a point where I just couldn't. And once again, F1, phenomenal movie, but the only problems I had with F1, music score or song selections was trash. It was too many songs in the movie. And the last race, the Abu Dhabi race, somehow keep spinning out and still maintain. Listen, if any of y'all watch any F1 races, when they spin out, that's it. Okay, so at the last race, they have to win so to make sure Raul, or I think his name is Roman Roberto, the owner, keeps his team. Because in the beginning, remember, he's down $300 million in debt, $350 million in debt. If his team does not score any points, the board can take the team from him. So he has to not only get points on throughout the season, but they have to score at least one race win to keep his team. So the last race, now the race prior, Sonny crashed out. Oh no, Sonny didn't crash. Yeah, he had a crash, and then the race before, JP had a bad crash. Okay, so last race, Abu Dhabi race, and it's JP, it's Sonny, it's Lewis Hamilton, and I think it's Verstappen racing. Right, they're the top four. It's they're under a red caution, red light, whatever. So it's a sprint, like it's a 2 lap sprint between the top four cars. Who's gonna win the race? So last lap, it's JP and Verstappen. They're in the lead. They're fighting for pole position because they're So then Sonny's like, hey, you can do this, whatever. And then Verstappen, being Verstappen, if you watch Verstappen race, he likes to push the line. So they end up spinning out. So that leaves. Oh no, it wasn't Verstappen. It was Hamilton and JP racing in the lead for the pole, for the win. They spin out, and it just leaves Sonny and Verstappen. But then Sonny, he's in the zone. He's flying. He talks about, when he talked with the team engineer about the racing, and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to chase that feeling where I'm flying. It's like basketball players, football players, when you're in the zone. When Michael Jordan says, hey, the rim looks like a big old rim, and I can't miss. So he's in the zone, and he's in the lead, and she's like, he's flying, right? And he ends up winning his one and only F1 race at the end. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But he spins out. They both spin out in this race and somehow maintain control of the car. I'm like, come on, stop now, stop. Yeah, it was on a red flag. Yeah. Listen, you spin out in F1, that you're done for the day. Okay, you're done for the day. So it was cool little movie. Like, I mean, you can tell Top Gun team, Joseph Krasinski, you can tell they did Top Gun because everything is like Top Gun esque. All the cut scenes with all the loud sounds and the visual effects from the front to the back, and it switches from the back to the front. The 360 cameras. I mean, it was beautifully shot. I mean, if you're into F1, it captured the essence of F1. I just thought it was like maybe 15, 20 minutes too long with a lot of the character dialogue and character building. I just didn't need to know everything. You know what I'm saying? Just give me the races. The races were excellently shot. I mean, I don't think you could do anything any better. Somebody asks, is it as good as Days of Thunder? I would say yes, because it captured the essence of F1. Like, if you go into an F1 event, it's rich folk. It's rich folk shit. These are people that own yachts and soccer teams and stuff. And the F1 cars and all that good stuff, and the whole when they box. I mean, you listen to enough F1, you know what box means the pit. And the race engineer, between the race engineer and the driver, you hear the communications during the races, and so it captured everything that's important to F1, what makes F1 so special to everybody outside of America once again. Okay. Have I ever recovered from a spin out? One time in the wintertime, I spun out in the middle of an intersection, and I did not crash, but that was like 20 years ago. So yes. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. I may be back, but don't hold me to it. I don't know why movies today feel like they have an exposition every. Yeah, right. This movie was 2 hours and 45 minutes. It did not have to be this long. 2:30 was pushing it. So at the very end, he leaves and goes to race Baja or Baja race in Mexico because he just likes to race. It's not about the money for him. I would say the opening scene when he's doing the Daytona, the 24 hours Daytona, that was dope. The opening scene was dope because he's in a Porsche and he's racing against who did he end? What car did he end up beating? It was a Ferrari. Yeah, it was 24 hours of Daytona. That I would love to see a 24-hour Le Mans Daytona movie about 24-hour races. That would be dope as fuck. That opening scene was dope. So my top 3 racing movies in no set order: F1, Ford v Ferrari, and Days of Thunder. In no set order. Okay, Days of Thunder would probably be 3 because I don't really care for NASCAR like that, but I get it. But top 2, Ford v Ferrari and F1. But that opening scene, 24 hours in Daytona, he's in a Porsche, and I mean, it's like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. You know, so, and then he's behind the Corvette engine. Um, it throws a rod, and you see the oil spray on his windshield, and it's just him and a Ferrari, and they're just going neck and neck. I was like, oh my god, like, so, yeah, it was dope. It was dope. It was dope. Le Mans 1971. I have to go rewatch that. Did it? Yeah, I'll have to go rewatch Steve McQueen and Le Mans. But right now, those are my 3. So, all right, I've run my mouth enough. I'm going to get out of here. I'll catch you all in a couple hours. Peace.